names are in front of you. We have a light board this evening. Code Enforcement Officer Mike Carnazza is with us as well as Greg Fulchetti, Town Council. The way we operate is I will call the applicant up. If you're going to be speaking, I'm going to swear you in, whether you're from the public or an applicant, unless you're an attorney and you're by law already sworn in. So we'll hear the cases. It's going to be a very long night. Obviously, it's a full house. I'm going to ask on some of the applicants that are going to be repetitive to try to keep your comments and questions, if they're redundant, please try to keep it, because it's going to be a very long night. So let's be cognizant of that. When you come up to speak, there's a sign-in sheet that is for the secretary so she can take better notes of who's who. And when I swear you in, I'll ask you to state your name and address for the record, but also sign in on that sign-in sheet at the podium. Will you all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you all. Our first application tonight is number 1 for Arlene Salkow for a variation of 15615, seeking permission to build an addition to the master suite, walk-in closet and bathroom. Property is located at 291 East Lake Boulevard, Mahopac, New York, and is known by tax map 6513-1-49. Good evening.
Good evening.
Oh, just another note too, if any presenters need to speak and present to their map or their drawings, that microphone is removable. Just take it with you if you're going to be speaking, but be sure to put it back when you're done. Ma'am, if you can direct it, yeah. That hinges down, so if you can direct the microphone to your mouth, or that works. All right, state your name and address for the record.
Arlene Salko, 291 East Lake Boulevard,
Raise-
Mahopac.
Raise your right hand, swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
All right, just, can you turn the microphone to your mouth a little bit so, yeah, the audience can hear? All right, let us know what you're seeking relief upon.
It is a master bedroom, walk-in closet, and addition to the bathroom.
Okay, so you have 22 feet provided, and you need a variance of 3 feet because you're coming out from the back of the house,
Correct.
from what I remember seeing on the drawings. There's no other there's no other property that you can purchase to bring this into conformance. The adjacent property is occupied, obviously. You can't buy the property behind you to bring it to conform.
No.
So, there's no other means to seek relief here,
No.
but then coming out of the back of the house. Okay. I'll ask the board members if any questions or comments.
Have you thought about going on top of the existing footprint of the house, or are you going,
No, I'm going straight out from my bedroom.
okay, you prefer that versus going up?
I can't go up. There's an attic up there.
No other questions, it's a very small variance.
No questions, thank you.
Okay.
I have no questions.
No questions. All right, is there any input or questions from the public on this application?
Everyone line up. No?
All right, thank you. I'll look for a motion to close the hearing on this
Motion
application.
to close.
Second?
Second.
By Rose, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. By the way, I don't think you're going to want to, but you can stick around to hear us adjudicate later, or you can call Dawn tomorrow morning and see what the outcome of the vote was. Okay, next application, number 2, Joseph Frumpkin for variation of 15615, use variance seeking permission to construct a boathouse with a studio apartment above it. Property is located at 1 5 Ferry Lane, Mahopac, New York, and is known by tax map 75-8-1, 48, 49, and 50. All right, and Mr. Greenberg representing.
Joel
Name and
Greenberg,
address.
architect for the project, 2 Musket Road, North Mahopac, New York.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so
I
help you
do.
God. Joel, again, if you can just turn the mic to, so it picks up in the microphones here, the speakers here.
Well, good evening, everyone. I think we have something here that is very unique. for Lake Mahopac, and I think it's something that I think we'll all be proud of if we are able to get the variances and proceed with the project. As you can see, what we're trying to do, what we're going to do, is to eliminate the house, which is the first house on the left, once you get onto Ferry Island, completely demolish the house. What we want to also do is to put an underground simulator for golf practice underneath the ground, and the entire top will be lawn and grass and covered. The only part that will be exposed is the part that faces the lake, which will be windows. This will just contain the golf simulator, a bathroom, and some storage area. The boathouse will have 2 boats that will be enclosed, and a third slip, which will be exposed. And on top of that, we're proposing a studio apartment to be constructed. So basically what's happening here now is that we're taking an existing one-family house, eliminating it completely, and we're going to also be tying this lot along with Joe Frumkin and his wife's house, which is next door, which contains 2 lots, and combine them into one large lot. So basically, these 3 lots will become one. And that way, you have, on 3 lots, instead of having 3 houses, you will have 1 house, a boathouse, and a studio apartment. So the question is, why do we need this? Why do we need the variances? Again, this is something very, can you hear? I don't hear anything, okay. Why do we need these variances? First of all, if you look at the floor plan, it's in the shape of a trapezoid, and it's done in a very, very tasteful way. And as you can see from the renderings, will be quite a beautiful sight to see on the south side of Lake Mahopac. As you can see from the bottom left-hand corner here, if you remember, I don't know if all you members, I know some of you were on the board back quite a few years ago when we came to the zoning board for many variances to construct the Frank Lloyd Wright House. If you recall, this Frank Lloyd Wright House is, those of you who have been out there, has a deck that is cantilevered well over 25 feet over the lake, and these variances were granted, and this has become certainly a sightseeing spot for people to come, and something I think the town can be proud of, to have something that was done and designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. That's on the north side of the lake. We have something here on the south side of the lake, which I think will be, if built, you'll be just as proud of. First of all, again, the code says you're allowed to come out off the shoreline 25 feet. But because this is a trapezoid, one side will be less than 25 feet, the other side will be 35. So it'll vary from under 25 to 35 feet. The other section of the code says a boathouse cannot be more than 10 feet in height. Again, because of the studio apartment and the configuration, the average height of the studio apartment will bring the height up from the code requirement of 10 feet to approximately 20 feet. Again, because of the way the code reads, the height of the building is not taken from the highest point, but is taken from the average point to a point midway between the eave and the ridge. So there are 2 variances that we require, but as I said, we're taking 3 lots, reducing it instead of 3 houses down to 1 house, and to have these amenities that I think will be an asset and a beautiful asset to the aesthetics of that section of Lake Mahopac. The question now you'll probably want to know is, well, why do we need this studio apartment? This is not to be rented. This is for family members of the Frumkin family, some of who have pets, which we feel will not be conducive to Joe and his wife as far as allergies are concerned. So that was one reason why this was being added. The other thing is that even though this height exceeds the code, again, if you look, whoops. This is a survey with the topography on it, and you'll see that the high point of this is approximately 668 to 670 feet, while the grade down at the shoreline is about 660 feet. So there's a drop of approximately 10 feet from the high point down to the low point. So as you're driving by here, in effect, you probably won't see, unless you go down to the shoreline itself, you probably will not see more than 10 feet exposed of the proposed boathouse and studio apartment. And now, if we can just go over the criteria for variances. Basically, this certainly will not be an undesirable change to the character of the neighborhood, but I think will certainly enhance it. Obviously, because of what we want to do, there's no other means to do it except to ask for the variances. Are the variances substantial? Number-wise, yes, you could argue that they are substantial, but I think the end result of what we're going to have will be an asset to the community, an asset to the neighborhood, and an asset to the town. Was it self-created? Well, again, it's not self-created. It's something that we want to do to enhance the property, reduce 3 lots down to 1 lot, and basically have 1 house on 3 lots.
So your intention is to combine these as one tax map?
Yes, in other words, what we're going to do is,
So, Mike, to have 3 houses on one tax map when there once was 3 existing, right? Are there 3 actual, because originally
no, right now, the lot where the house is, that first house on the left, that is lot number 1.
was once originally 2 separate houses. I remember coming to
No,
the board.
no. This was always here. This is the older house. This has been here for who knows how many years. The next 2 lots, which if you look over at this map over here, this shows the lot that we're talking about. It shows Joe Frumkin's house, which basically, originally, when it was built, took these 2 houses that were there, combined this into 1 lot. So right now, you've got 1 house on 2 lots, and the older house, which we're talking about, which is the first lot. So now taking these 2 lots, which are already combined, and now adding this one to the property. So there'll be 1 house on 3 lots
No,
with a boathouse.
time out. There'll be 1 house on 1 lot, all the way in. Then there'll be 1 house on 2, in the beginning, with a accessory apartment and a golf simulator in the same lot.
Correct.
There's not 3 houses on 1 lot. There's 1 and 1
But he
with
said
an
they're
accessory.
combining the lots.
But not the far one you're not combining. You can't,
Yeah, we're gonna, in other words, we have no problem making all the property that the Frumkins own into 1 large lot.
then you would need to use variance for that also.
To
You're allowed to have 1 one-family house on the lot,
Yeah,
not 2 one-family houses on the lot.
I don't want 2-family, no, you misunderstood me.
What's all the way in? Is there a house on that lot?
Here, here, it's right here.
I'm gonna check my tax map, hold on one second.
Joe,
There is today a house on that lot.
the 3rd lot?
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Frumpkin, if you're going to speak, I need to swear you in and come up, please. I presume you're Mr. Frumpkin.
Yeah,
Just name and address for the record.
Joseph Frumpkin, 5 Ferry Lane, Mayapack, New York.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
God.
Just to clarify on the facts, there's an additional lot over there which has also been incorporated. So this is 1 house on 3 lots that exists today. Today, on 1 Ferry Island, which we bought last year, there is 1 house on 1 lot. And that's the current state of affairs. What we want to do is combine everything and just have the apartment above the boathouse. I don't know if you consider that a dwelling or not.
So,
That's an accessory.
end of the day, sorry about that. I was misunderstood. I thought you had another house further in. So
no.
he has 1 house on the first 2 lots he purchased.
And an accessory
And this one
apartment.
he just bought, he's gonna have
Merged.
an accessory apartment and a golf simulator,
And you're
period.
combining all
So
those
all the lots will
as
now be 1
tax
lot.
map.
So you're basically having 1 lot, or 1 house on 4 lots, correct, Joe? Correct. So you have 1 lot, I mean, excuse me, 1 house
One
on
house
4
on 4
lots.
lots with an accessory apartment.
Correct.
How big is the apartment over the boathouse?
It's approximately, I think it's
900 max.
about 20, no, it's less than that. It's about 800 square feet.
Okay, 900 is the max.
Yeah, I know.
I just wanna make sure you didn't need
No, we
another.
don't exceed that.
My question is, it wasn't advertised as such. Would that have to be re-advertised?
Construct a boathouse with a studio apartment above the
as an
property.
accessory apartment.
That is how it's advertised.
Say again?
That's how it's advertised.
It says,
Construct a boathouse with studio apartment above it. Property is located at 1 and 5 Ferry Lane, Mayapack, New York, 10541.
So
one in five will
studio
be-
apartment could be the same as accessory in terminology.
Studio is an accessory, correct.
Okay.
As long as there's a principal house on that lot, which is the house.
Right, right.
And it has to be less than 35% of the total, which it is by much.
Yeah, just to repeat, so everybody is clear about it, we're now having one house, this house is coming down, the existing house is going to remain, and all the lots that the Frumpkin zone will become one lot. So as Mike said, it'll be one house on the entire piece of property, plus the accessory apartment, and the golf simulator.
Now, you guys, you're gonna have to go in front of the DEC.
Yes,
DEC
obviously,
and all that.
this is the first board we go on, if the variance is granted, we have
And
a road to
New York
follow
State.
with,
And you can condition it that way. So this way, if they don't get it, the variance is not just hanging out there, I believe, right? Wouldn't that be a good idea?
correct. Yeah, in other words, condition it on the fact that we have to get all the approvals from the,
Board of
well, also
Health.
the local Environmental Conservation Board, and since the lake is, I believe, state-owned,
State-owned?
so we probably have to go to
OGS.
the DEC also. So this is the first step.
And Board of Health approval?
Yes.
No, but that's another approval they need.
Okay. Anything further, Joel?
No, I'll answer any
At
questions.
this point, I'll open up to the board for questions. Mark?
No questions.
John?
Yeah, Joel, just really nice design.
Thank
Was there
you.
any consideration of installing and constructing and designing this house on the property on the area above the sod farm, or in that area on the lot, or close to
No,
the
I-
dock inside the property line?
Again, we've tried to do something unique, and I think this is something unique, just to put a studio apartment in the middle of a lot doesn't really make any sense. I think we're better off taking the house down, covering the whole area, and it'll just become the whole landscaped area, and then the only portion that will be exposed for the golf simulator is the portion that directly faces the lake. So when you drive onto the island, all you're going to see is a beautifully landscaped So this entire lot, which is landscaped now on the front and the side, once the house is down, this will all be beautifully landscaped. And I think it's a wonderful entrance coming onto Ferry Island to see this beautifully landscaped area and the boathouse, a boathouse with the studio apartment above. I think it's a wonderful entrance onto the island. And again, we're going from which at one time there were 4 houses to 1, which is, I think, a big improvement.
No further questions, yeah.
Joel, is there anything you could do to cut down the 10-foot variance that you need?
On the height?
No,
Yeah.
on the,
Oh,
over
on
lake.
yeah, actually, I started giving some thought to that, and the answer is, what happens here, and the reason why we have the extra intrusion onto the lake, is that if you see, this is the shoreline, this heavy line over here, this is the boathouse line. I think what we could probably do is to twist it a little bit so that the boathouse and the dock are up against the shoreline, so we probably, yes, the answer is yes, we probably could reduce that by several feet.
How many feet do you think?
I would say probably at least 3 feet. So we could reduce that from,
10 feet to 7?
yeah, 10 feet to 7.
Okay. All right, nothing further, thank you.
Rose?
So Joel, the golf simulator building is not attached to the boathouse?
No, if you look at the survey here, this is the boathouse, this is the golf simulator. So again, if you look at the rendering here, this is the boathouse, and the golf simulator is, again, basically underground. The only part, again, because the lot is, the high point is over here, and then it just takes a nosedive down. So basically, as I said, when you come onto the island, you won't even see, you'll never see this unless you're in the lake looking back. The only part that's exposed is, again, because of the slope, this portion of the golf simulator will be exposed with glass. But again, coming onto the island, all you're going to see is magnificently landscaped property.
But you will be able to see that second structure, because you'll see the lookout on the golf
No.
Not from
Sure, it's gonna be at grade level. From the water.
from the water.
You'll see the windows.
Yeah, here,
From the water, you
Ro,
go- So it's like having two structures on that piece of property.
no, because, again, the golf simulator is underground.
But not the top part of it,
Yes,
because there's glass windows.
again, here.
The sod above it. It's like, it's a,
Here,
it's like a basement.
Rose, look, you have a slope like this. All right? The house does this, all right? We're taking down the entire house. So all you're gonna see, this, and then the golf simulator comes out like this. It's basically completely underground. So the roof of the golf simulator is gonna be lawn. So the only part of the golf simulator that you're gonna see is this little piece over here. The sides and the rear are gonna be buried underground.
Right, like
So
a
it's-
basement.
Okay, yeah, like a basement. But the point is, on a basement, sometimes you see it 3 or 4 sides. This, you're not gonna, you're only gonna see this facing the lake. So as you're coming onto the island, all you're gonna see is magnificent landscape lot. And the only time you can see this is if you're on a boat coming past it and looking back.
So it's not considered an accessory structure? It is.
Oh, yeah.
He needs a permit for it.
Oh, it needs permits, just like
He needs a
anything else.
permit for it.
It's just that,
Sorry, I shouldn't
it's just that it's a little unusual, not being a structure that you see above grade. It's all below grade.
We were not able to get on the property.
We had given the, code to,
I tried it today twice, I went back twice, and the code didn't work for us.
it's pound
Don't announce
1054.
it, don't.
Don't advertise it.
Oh,
The one that was
sorry.
given to us didn't work. I
Okay,
had
it'll be
the
changed
email and-
tomorrow.
So,
Well, we apologize for that. We did give the code to Rose, I mean, to Dawn.
Other thing is, so you're officially going through the process of merging all of these properties?
Correct, yes.
So we can condition it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
All the properties?
So you're basically taking 4 lots and making them into one.
That's all I have.
okay. Is there any input from the public on this application? Questions or concerns? Comments? Okay, I'll look for a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close.
Do I have a second?
Second.
By John, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Application number 3 this evening is the Janik Property Management Corp. for use variance seeking permission to install 2 30,000-gallon above-ground liquid propane storage tanks on precast piers, 2 bobtail fill stanchions, and 1 transport unload stanchion in a residential zone. Property is located at 16 Route 6N, Mahopac, New York, and is known as tax map 85.16-1-20. Do you guys have a second set of drawings? Well, we need the camera up here to pick it up for the public.
We have our own. It's the same one that was provided to the board if you want to follow along with the copies.
Yeah.
They want to see that.
Don't forget we have these.
Yeah, were they in the folder?
They're in the folder. I don't need them.
Yeah. Give me interested now, come back. If you loosen that buckle there, yeah.
Or you could hold it like Sinatra.
That'll be easier.
There you go.
Good evening. My name is Craig Bumgarner. I'm an attorney with offices in Carmel, New York, and I represent Genic Property Management tonight in connection with their application.
Yeah, Dominic, can you turn up the volume back there, Dominic, on the speakers?
Better?
Test, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great. Are you gonna, is your applicant gonna be speaking? I might as well swear him in if he's going to, or?
I don't think he'll need to,
Okay.
but if we do, we'll swear him in. I represent the applicant, Genic Property Management, in connection with their application for a use variance. The property in question is located at 16 Route 6N in Mahopac, New York. It is a residential zoning district. The property consists of approximately 4.72 acres. And currently, if you're following along with the plans that we provided, the fourth sheet, I believe, in there depicts the property and what's on it right now. There's a 3,500 square foot building located on the property. That building is used by an auto repair facility. It is also used by a towing facility. In addition to that, right now, there is outside storage on the property. Some of it is used for new car storage for an automobile dealership. And then there is a paving company and a landscaping company that also stores construction equipment there. What my client is proposing to do is install two 30,000-gallon liquid propane storage tanks. They would be located here on the property, and they would sit on concrete pads. And in addition to that, there will be one stanchion attached to this to unload into the tanks, and then two stanchions to load out of the tanks into the trucks that would deliver the propane.
The tanks are there now, right?
Excuse me?
The tanks are there now?
Apparently so, yes.
What about the stanchions? Are all they there too?
The stanchions are not there. Okay. So, in addition to that, there will be, if you take a look at the plans here, there will be safety barriers put around the tanks. The delivery, to and from this, basically what's going to happen is our trucks, our own trucks, are going to go in, they will fill up in the morning, and then they will go out on their delivery route. So this would be normal business hour type stuff. We're not talking about anything happening at night, and should not really generate a lot of additional traffic in and out of the site. Now, we're applying today for a use variance because this is a residential zone. But understand something, it's not as if we are bringing a commercial enterprise into a residential district where none previously existed. This is a commercial property. It's been a commercial property for a long period of time. And in fact, the use that we are bringing to it is, going to be relatively low impact to the area in terms of truck traffic in and out. There will be, and I don't know if the board has had a chance to take a look at the memo that we submitted, but there is going to be very little release in any of this, okay? Basically, the only thing that gets released when these trucks get filled is what's in the tip of the hose when we are loading in and bringing out, okay? So the emissions are going to be negligible.
Okay.
Okay?
Is that what we have for presentation?
No, well, let me, if I can answer some questions or address some of the use variance standards. I mean, again, understanding that we are applying for a use variance which has a traditionally very high standard to meet. Realize, again, though, that we are an existing commercial facility here already, okay? The reason, or the financial reason, that my client is looking to do this is because for him to deliver propane, he has to send his trucks an hour and a half away to pick up propane. What happens in this business is the people who have the distribution facilities do not like to fill competitors, all right? So for him to be able to put the tanks here, fill the tanks, and fill his trucks, it makes it a lot easier for him, rather than sending his trucks far enough away so that somebody who's not a competitor will fill those trucks. In terms of the character of the neighborhood, something I addressed, briefly before in saying that this is commercial property. We're not asking right now to bring a commercial enterprise into the middle of a residential zone where none previously existed.
Okay. I see you raising your hand, but I'll afford the opportunity once I open it up to the public, sir. Just be patient. All right, board members, any questions, concerns, comments? Rose?
You already mentioned that it is a use variance. And with the use variance, you know that there are certain criteria that you need to meet. One thing that you haven't given us is any financials. I don't think that we can do anything with this case until we see some kind of financial proof that this property can't make a return, which I think it already is. So I think that you're not quite ready yet to present this case. I think there's more homework that needs to be done.
What we can do is get some facts and figures for you, some sort of a balance sheet or something like that, and submit it to the board. If the board would like to hold it over, we can submit that for the next meeting for sure.
Also, I think there is a self-created hardship here. The tanks are already on the property when you didn't go through the process of getting the variances.
Well, that's not, with all due respect, self-created hardship. You're talking about the existing tanks and saying it's self-created. We didn't come here to get approval for these tanks that are already operating, okay? The hardship that we've got here is the fact that we've got to travel an hour and a half for our propane. So, that's the hardship that we're facing now. That's not something that we created in that sense. We're looking to get something closer that we can, deliver from there.
That's all I have.
Phil?
Was there a previous variance granted for this property?
There's a letter in the file from Marge Agor, 1982. Previous site plan approval was granted to construct a garage and to store construction equipment and materials on the site per section, blah, blah, blah. It's a big, long section. But anyway. the
Nothing about
trees-
tanks or propane, correct?
No.
Okay.
That was
All right.
not included. That's why they're back here now, per me sending them over here.
And just a note, on the application, it says no previous board appearances, which is not true.
Well, no, he's referring to the site plan, I believe, the
That
site
is
plan
I
approval.
don't know if they got, it doesn't say variance. This says a site plan approval was granted, so
Oh, okay.
the problem is I don't have access to the old maps from when, what was it, 82?
Okay.
I wouldn't have exact.
Yeah, we rely upon, we don't even complete that section of the application. It gets completed by the building department, so they had indicated that there were no prior variance applications. There was during that site plan approval, if you go back and look at the records, and the reason that Mike's referring us over here, there was some discussion about outdoor fuel storage tanks, but it was not this type of tank they were referring to. They were referring to a tank for this construction business so that they could just fill up with diesel on their way out the door.
Right.
And so while we were at the planning board, it was indicated that we should be coming to the zoning board because that discussion about tanks and the approval of those tanks was not something that the town felt was contemplated and would have covered this application.
Understood. John, any questions?
Yes, you mentioned that you would be operating basically 9 to 5, Monday through Friday?
I will have to have my client sworn in for that, only because my understanding is that the trucks will go out a little bit earlier than 9 o'clock. Okay. 8 to 5, I'm told.
8 to 5, Monday through Friday, no weekend work?
He indicates in the wintertime, there could be weekends.
So it could be 7 days a week, 8 to 5, or...
Well, in the wintertime, if we had to fill trucks, there would be. I mean, one of the things that my client is finding in the business is that with fuel costs, and, I mean, my client operates Action Fuel, which is a, fuel oil provider, and a lot of their business is transitioning to the natural gas and liquid propane. So that's why they're seeing a lot more of the business being pushed that way.
Do you have, or does your client have a possible forecast of, a 60,000 gallon capacity, how much she would go through in a week or a month, or how would that, what kind of activity would that be, as far as offloading? They're coming in 9,000 gallon containers or 6,000 gallon containers, and do we have an idea of, how many deliveries we're doing?
Yeah, let me swear him in, just so we're not going back and forth here.
Name and address for the record.
Wayne Staton, 850 Peekskill Hollow Road, Carmel, New York.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes,
So if you can answer John's question.
And the majority of the fuel, we do about 250,000 gallons a year, which a majority of it,
Yeah.
we do about 250,000 gallons a year right now, and the majority of it is in the wintertime, which usually requires the trucks to load at least once a day in the wintertime, and they usually leave for the day and come back at the end of the day. The plant can only hold 80% capacity, so it only holds 48,000 gallons out of the 60, which basically is that, and the trailers that come in will be 9,000 gallons. So to replenish the tanks wouldn't take a lot of traffic, twice a week maybe.
Once it's initially
Once it's filled.
filled
Once it's
to
filled, yeah.
90%.
80%.
80%, it would go. The liquid propane, the facility, I was looking at just your shop drawings and your site. There's no fixed fire protection that I saw there. Is there any fixed fire protection in place or it's proposed?
They actually have safety valves that are like in the event of a leakage, which is pretty much, they're powered by nitrogen, so they would actually freeze the valve so nothing could be released. And as far as a fire, I don't know what they install. Like, I don't think there's an extinguishing system. I just think they're just all safety valves.
I think there's no natural way to put out propane fueled fire, right, without...
It's vapor, yeah, heavier than air. So there's that's a extremely flammable substance, as you know, and if there was a release or a rupture, it's vaporized. It's a large area. It could run over.
Yes, you'd need a good mixture in order to have a flame. It's not, just the liquid itself is going to freeze.
Okay. Do you have any emergency response procedures in place if that happens?
What do I have? I don't know what the procedure is, to be honest with you.
It's fine. It's fine. No further questions.
All right, Mark, any questions?
Craig, can you just explain to the board how 2 tanks of this size would not change the essential character of this neighborhood, as the neighborhood is residential?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at this as an ongoing commercial concern there with commercial traffic coming in and out, okay? The number of trips going in and out, or the added number of trips because of this operation being added to the site is minimal. I mean, it really is. And so, when you have somebody coming to you for a use variance for property that is not already a commercial, that now you're talking about bringing a commercial operation into a neighborhood.
But aren't the trucks now going to be picking up at this site instead of picking up somewhere else? Wouldn't that increase the truck traffic?
It would increase the truck traffic, but as I say, I mean, to a minimal degree, on a road that is, on the county line and is also a major thoroughfare. So we're Wayne just indicated that the tanks will be filled only a few times a week, and his trucks going out will be going out in the morning and coming back at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I was going to ask the question, but I see on the site map, the nearest house, as the crow flies, looks like it's about 150, maybe 200 yards from the proposed propane facility location. I got to tell you, if I was living there, I wouldn't be very happy about this. But, you know, just from a hazardous standpoint of what could potentially happen here, you know, I think, you know, we're probably going to have to go through the criteria as a board before I open it up to the public, and I'm going to read. For use variance, you have to meet all of these criteria. Number one, is incapable of earning a reasonable return if used for any of the allowable uses. And like Rose had stated, you would need to prove this to us, show us amounts and the burden, which I don't think you've presented. Number two, properties affected by unique or at least highly uncommon circumstances. Number three, will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood, which is a tough one there. And number four is not self-created. You know, we're going to open it up to the public shortly, but I mean, do you want to respond to any of those criteria?
Well, again, what we'll do, you know, we can get some, you know, we'll prepare a spreadsheet for you on the numbers, okay, so that we can give you some hard financial figures. Understand something, though. This is a residential property, and or a residential zoning district, and there are factors with this particular site that make it very unique. I mean, there are wetlands that surround a lot of this area, okay? Wetlands that my client has cleaned up significantly since he took over there. This is, it's a 4.72 acre site. You're not going to develop this into residences. You're not going to put a subdivision on this property. It really is, despite the zoning designation as a residential property, it is best suited as a commercial property, and that's why it has been for many, many years. There is an engineer that my client is working with who handled the planning process of this and does these facilities all over the place, and we will talk to them about the safety concerns, okay? Because they're the ones who designed the safety features for this system, and so that's something that I'll also update the board with, just so that they can be assured that there's not going to be a problem with these tanks being sited here. Okay.
All right, I mean, if someone in the past made the mistake, I think personally, of turning this or allowing this to be somewhat of a commercial property in a residential zone, all right, it happened, it is what it is. If there was a different type of use, like the continued use of cars or landscape storage that are not so dangerous, I think it would be a different situation. I mean, you'll probably meet some opposition as well, but the fact and the nature of this type of facility and business is what I think concerns most people. But at this point, I think I'll open it up to the public.
I just have one question.
Go ahead,
Sorry.
Rose.
So you sell fuel right now, correct? Yes. So you're planning to expand your use by expanding your business to propane as well? Is
No.
that the way I understand it?
No, we already sell propane, and that's what we're indicating. The need for this facility is because we can't go to a similar facility nearby and buy our propane to distribute. That makes us competitors with the people who are selling us the fuel.
So you currently sell propane?
We do,
But not
Okay.
from that location.
not from
Correct.
this location. We
Okay.
send our trucks an hour and a half away
This is a
to pick it up.
convenience. This is not, when you talk about having incapable of earning a reasonable return on the property, this is just convenient. This is a better convenient place that you want to put the tanks. Oh, you already put the tanks there.
No, it's a dollars and cents cost to us to send our trucks out to collect this fuel and bring it back.
And how is that not self-created? The fact that you put 2 tanks there without getting the approvals, without coming here, and then now saying it's not self-created? Because that's one thing you have to prove, as well as the financials that you didn't give us. How is that not self-created that you have, oh, I have these tanks here, we want to use them? How is that not self-created? You're not using it for auto repair anymore. You're not going to use it for putting Audis from the dealership there. You now want to put something else there that you already put there. How is that not self-created?
We do plan on keeping the other uses that are there.
That's fine. How is this not self-created when you put 2 tanks there already?
If the tanks weren't there right now, okay? If the tanks were not sitting there right now, would you feel as if it were, this was not self-created with us coming here?
This is just one aspect, one of the proofs that you have. It's your burden, not ours.
Understood.
So that's one thing. And then this first proof that you have is the financials, where you have to show that is incapable of earning a reasonable return. And to me, that doesn't include the fact that you just want to make it convenient for your company.
Yeah.
And make more money. That's the bottom line. You want to make more money. You're still reaping a reasonable return on this property, whether you put these tanks in or not. You're still gaining a reasonable return. Any financials that you have will show that you are reaping a reasonable return. You've already expanded the usage by letting the Volkswagens come in and sit there. So you're just increasing and increasing your profit margin by expanding to having propane on your property. Because who's to say that your propane business skyrockets and you have trucks going in and out of there? When we grant a variance, we grant it forever. So now you may very well expand it to the point where it does create a problem on Route 6N, trucks going in and out. Right now, you're saying there's only going to be a little more business, but potentially it could grow even more, and you could have a lot more traffic going in and out.
All right, so I'm going to open it up to the public at this point. Sure. All right, if you can either leave the mic on the podium, whoever's going to come up and speak. Sir in the green? And please just address the board, not the applicant. Can you sign your name on that sign-in sheet?
Yes, sir.
And state your name and address for the record?
My name is Anthony Batalico. I am representing, my parents own 16N, and I live in Brooklyn. I'm a lieutenant in the New York City Fire Department. I'm responsible for...
All right, hold on. I got to swear you in.
Sorry.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
You're talking to us, please.
Yes, okay.
Address us.
So my background, I have 2 master's degrees and a doctorate in biology. I am a lieutenant in the New York City Fire Department. I'm currently running the training for hazmat responses for New York City Fire Department. We train 700 of the responders who go to nuclear, chemical, biological, radiological incidences. I work on Hazmat Company 1. We respond to all the major emergencies in New York, even propane incidences, acetylene, etc. I'm here just to propose or put down the facts regarding propane. As you indicated, propane is a flammable gas. It is represented in the...
Sir, address the board.
Oh, sorry.
please.
It's part of a hazmat guide that's prepared with funds for the United States regarding how first responders should address a propane incident type emergency. This is the emergency response guidebook with the particular guidelines. I want to first talk about the chemical physical properties of propane. It's 44.1 is the molecular weight. It is heavier than air. The molecular weight of air is 29. So that means it's a gas that stays relatively low. It goes to low areas. It's also has a flammable range of 2.1% to 9.5%. That's a very, very low flammable range. And if you have a failure of one of these tanks, you will be outside of the flammable range. The propane will move quite a distance depending on, of course, temperature, wind conditions, etc., and find an ignition source. And once that ignition source is met by the 2 to 5%, it will conduct a fireball for it. So it is indicated as a flammable gas. It may be odorized, the one that they are transporting, which usually it should be, but even if there is a release and you do not smell it, it causes dizziness, confusion, excitation. It's also an asphyxiant because it is an oxygen displacer as well. So regarding the hazards, it is an extremely hazardous material. In our emergency guidebook, which is on every New York City Fire Department vehicle and probably most fire departments throughout the country, this is a guideline that we would use if we responded to a propane incident. It directs us directly to the fact that on the guide, this is for emergency responses, to guide 115, which says it's a fire or explosion, has severe health risks, and it tells us of areas of evacuation for these particular types of leaks. I went to the guidebook on what the guidelines would be for first responders. Our guide only goes up to 36,984 gallons. The recommended distance for response, for emergent response, is 1,498 feet. I can't really read it exceptionally well without my glasses, but preferred is 2,219 feet. That's for emergency response. That means that it's almost more than a half a mile. If you go to Google Maps and you look at the distance of the residential properties in that area, there is a significant number of household residences right around the area there. I can't tell you for sure. Maybe you have a better guideline from your maps on the number of life hazards there are. Also, in terms of fire suppression, this would require a significant amount of water. Even with just one tank potentially failing, the minimum requirement for water for this type of operation is going to be, it is stated here in terms of how to attempt to flood it, would be at least 1,000 gallons a minute. So in a New York City hydrant, and I don't know if you have the same, we're looking at, we need a 42-inch main, and we would need several pumpers. The best pumpers, when we run 2 lines of 2.5 inch, which we would have to stretch from a distance, only reach 200 feet. We wouldn't even be able to reach these tanks. You need enormous amounts of water to cool them down, because if there is a fire that is a result of failure, which usually occurs during transfer, and you can't cool those tanks, then you have an incident where it's called BLEVE, boiling liquid expansion vapor explosion. What happens is the gas that's at the top of the surface of the tank, it begins to expand and heat, and it causes failure, catastrophic failure of the tank. Within 6 minutes, it causes a fireball. The distances here are relatively significant, I believe, further than what you said the local closest residential house was. He's referring to relief valves controlled by nitrogen, which freezes them. But when you have fire and you have the heat, the thermal meltdown of the frozen relief valves, which are pressure relief valves, they will eventually have to fail, and if they do not, then the tank does fail. The reason you have relief valves is because if you build up that pressure, you're going to have a catastrophic failure of the container. These type of containers are not even permitted in New York City residences. You're only allowed 5 pounds of propane, a 40-pound tank, 1 per residential unit. It should never even be in a structure. So regarding these particular hazards, and considering the density of the people in the neighborhood, it's going to be a disparate thing on all the residents of this neighborhood. I don't know if the tanks that he has there are currently filled. I don't even know how with DOT regulations they will permit the movement of these type of vehicles in that area without proper traffic signs and all. There has to be a whole fire suppression system, which they didn't indicate, which may be dry chem foam. Also, emergency responders have to be within a certain range or distance. When this type of tanks, they're not even allowed over the bridges in New York City for hazmat transport. So these are relatively dangerous. I drove down 6N, past my parents' property today. There was an accident right on 6N, 2 vehicles opposing traffic. So this is another safety concern. So, you know, regarding the fact that he has experience transferring propane, to even consider coming here to have tanks of this size, which I don't know how he could have legally even transported. If they do have propane, or even if he parks his trucks, he may have to have a significant fire suppression system above those vehicles. So he may already have broken the law regarding the storage of propane, because you can't just park one of these particular vehicles in a residential neighborhood. I can add more to it,
I was
but
going to say,
this is the take.
if I may, it's going to be a long night. We
Yes,
get the
so-
point. The bottom line is it's dangerous.
Bottom line, it's clearly
We
dangerous.
appreciate
We have
your knowledge
documentation.
and scientific
These
background.
These particular books are
Okay.
available also online. They're prepared as guidelines.
I have
Just
one
regarding
question
one
for
tank.
you, Mr.
So,
Botulco. You have a great knowledge. For the board, can you just tell us what is the ignition temperature, like the flash point of this substance? It's
We do
very-
have the flash point for
where
the
that would
chemical,
ignite.
physical properties. The flash point, well, because it's a gas, when we're talking about a flash point, we have to consider a liquid's flash point, but it has such a propensity to be a gas that a gas is worse, because a gas increases in volume. So in this particular case, when you're looking at the guideline, it says it's not applicable because the state that this wants to be in is a gas.
Right.
The only reason it's in a liquid state is because it's under pressure. And as soon as you release that pressure,
gas.
it becomes a gas. The expansion ratio of propane is 270 to 1. That means 1 gallon will expand to occupy 270 times the space and volume. So in terms of, if you take the volume of that particular liquid and multiply it by 270, that would be the amount of volume of gas that's generated from that particular propane. So it's an enormous expansion ratio.
Okay. I think other people want to be heard. so-
Sure. Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody else wish to be heard on this application? Please sign in on the form on the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Sounds good.
And I'll just remind you, if try not to be redundant, if it's any new facts
Sure.
or questions.
All righty. Well,
Name and address for the record.
Salvatore Serio, 30 Pine Tree Lane, Mayapack, New York.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Did you sign in? I'm sorry. Let me see.
Right now. All righty. Well, first I want to say that guy's speech before me was incredible, and I don't think I can come up to that to compete with that guy. But I have a little statement, and I'm representing everybody on Pine Tree Lane. And here it goes. Good evening, and thank you for giving me the time to address a major concern that we, the 5 homeowners on Pine Tree Lane in Mayapack, New York, would like to voice. It has come to our attention that an application for a use variance was applied for in order to install 2 30,000-gallon propane tanks at 16 Route 6, Mayapack, New York. As many of you know, Pine Tree Lane is a residential area with many children and families living there. With that being said, there are several concerns in regards to the town allowing the installation of these tanks. First, of course, we are concerned regarding the safety and security of installing these tanks. However, we all trust in the town of Carmel that all the necessary safety requirements will be enforced, which will guarantee all safety measures and will be adhered to for the greater good of the neighborhood. One of our greatest concerns is if you allow the installation of these propane tanks, this will cause a major nuisance to us all. The neighborhood will be hearing and smelling diesel trucks entering and exiting day and night to fill up. And we will have to deal with strong odor of propane. This is not fair to the homeowners. We will be forced to keep our windows closed in order to alleviate the noise and odor factors. As it is now, tow trucks enter all hours of the day and night. They run the vehicles for a significant length of time, emitting fumes and noise pollution. In addition, the headlights are consistently shining into the windows on the neighboring homes. The odor of the diesel fumes are intolerable and can lead to significant damages. There have been several instances of neighbors smelling heavy fumes that are coming from cars being painted, along with hearing loud banging noises as early morning hours, sometimes as early as 6 a.m. Another major concern is that Route 6N is a two-lane road. How can a delivery truck safely enter and exit onto Route 6N without encroaching into the oncoming traffic lane? Route 6N has a lot of daily traffic and many school buses travel here as well. It does not seem justifiable to put this much risk into a residential neighborhood. We are asking you to please take into account our concerns and carefully consider what is best for the well-being of the children and safety for all families. We all hope that you will understand and validate our objection to installing these tanks. We have faith in the process of these hearings and look forward to reaching the proper outcome for the community. With all this being shared, we ask you, the town of Carmel, to disallow this installation of tanks. I do here have a picture of 2 tanks on the property that someone gave me a couple days ago. That's pretty much all I have. Once again, thank you for your time and consideration into this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else wish to be heard? Come on up. State your name and address for the record, and I'll swear you in, then you can sign in.
Edward Levanti, 41 Route 6N, Mayapack, New York.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so
I
help
do.
you God. Thank you.
Yes, Good evening. I
Evening.
just basically can reiterate what he just said, so I won't even bother, but I'd just like to let you know, I represent all the houses on 6N, all the way up to Carpenter's Trailer Park. I would have went further, but I did not have time. Just got the letter a week ago. I work, stuff like that. But
Gotcha.
everybody from the county border all the way up to Carpenter's Trailer Park is a no for this. And the one thing that wasn't addressed that he mentioned is they said that the trucks will only be filling up at in the morning. Well, that's when the school buses are running. And like he addressed, an 18-wheeler is going to have to fill those tanks. Now, the car carriers that already drop off all those Volkswagens and Audis cause major headaches because he has to pull out, back up, pull out, back up, because it is only a 2-lane road. There's no way he can make a turn in or out. So I'm just thinking, I'm imagining a 18-wheeler with a propane tank on the back of it. That's a scary thought. So that's really about it.
Okay.
And also, it is a passing lane right there. It's the fastest section of 6N, because right in front of my house,
right.
it is a passing lane. You know, it's
Good
kind of a
point.
racetrack, you know, people fly.
Sadly, yep.
You know, so, other than that is, as he was mentioning, it's surrounded by wetlands. You know, that's definitely a factor, because we like the environment. And that's about it. And school buses all morning, like he said, oh, they'll be filling up in the early hours of the morning. Well, that's when the school buses are going up and down 6N. My daughter gets on one, so that's really about it. And like, as I said, everyone up to Carpenter's Trailer Park is a no on this.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Can you try to fix that microphone? Good evening. State your name and address for the record.
Robert Gaylog.
Swear to tell, raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Go ahead.
I'm Robert Gaylog. I live on Colton Road, 23 Colton Road. And the gentleman that was up here first, just want to make one point, very brief statement. The gentleman over here that's in the business the board appropriately asked one question. What would you do? What's your backup plan if there's an emergency? I can't believe that somebody in the business would evade that kind of a question. We had to depend upon the expertise of somebody that God sent to this meeting. All I have to say is if I was in that business, I would have given you that information first. That should tell you a lot. Thank you
Good
very
point.
much.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to be heard? All right, Greg, I'll give you a brief opportunity to recant, or, I mean, I don't know if you want to decide to hold this over or not due to further proof.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah. Yes, we already had indicated that we will have some further submissions for the board. I want to talk to the engineer who designed the facility about the safety features, and maybe even have him come in to talk to the board at the next meeting. So if you want to hold it over for us, then we'll get that information from them and come back and address the board at the next meeting. That would be great.
Okay, I'll look for a motion for a holdover.
So moved.
Is it to close it or to?
No, we can't close the public hearing, right, because if it's a holdover?
You can, but I think the request with the applicant was would the board consider holding it over for further submissions? I don't know what the motion was because I didn't hear it. But that's the applicant's request. Do you have a motion to that effect?
So moved to hold it over.
Seconded. All right. Any discussion, all in favor?
In favor?
Aye.
Aye. John?
Aye.
Okay, we'll hold this matter over till next month and
Great.
afford you the opportunity to further research or gather information.
Okay, thank you.
All right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. No,
You don't get another.
no. You could look for it in Maypac News or the
Call the office.
Courier or
It's the fourth Thursday of every
Fourth
month.
Thursday of the month.
September 26th, but I don't know if he's going to gather his information in that timeline, so it's not known that,
For now.
for now.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
You want to put those in now or not?
Well, they're in the file already. If we have copies of it, they're in the file.
Perfect. Is that mine or yours? That's mine.
All right, application number 4 this evening is for Homeland Towers LLC, SMSA Limited Partnership, doing business as Verizon Wireless Cassie for variation section 156.62. Folks, can I ask you to, if you're not here to hear this application, to briefly exit? Yeah.
Oh, I'm recusing myself.
Okay, why don't we wait till the room clears a little bit? All right, and this is for a variation of section 156.6202, 156-42D, and 15620, as well as an interpretation seeking permission to install wireless telecommunications facility. Property is located at 254 Croton Falls Road, Mahopac, New York. Now or formerly Deal, and is known by tax map 6519-1-43. All right, representing, you're an attorney?
Good evening. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board.
Okay. Note for the record, Rose has recused herself on this application.
Robert Gaudioso with the law firm of Snyder & Snyder on behalf of Homeland Towers LLC and New York SMSA Limited Partnership. This is an application for a wireless telecommunications facility. There are 3 variances that I'd like to discuss, and then I'd like to discuss the documents that we've submitted in support of the application. The first variance is with respect to the fence height. The building inspector has determined that the fence height is limited to 6 feet. We've proposed an 8-foot fence. The reason we proposed the taller fence is that under the wireless section of the zoning ordinance, which requires a special permit in front of the planning board, there's a requirement to adequately secure the facility. We have proposed the 8-foot fence. If the board saw fit to reduce that to 6 feet, we would certainly agree to reduce the height of the fence to 6 feet. We believe that given the location of the facility on the large parcel, that the fence would not be visible, it will be landscaped, it will be well screened by the existing vegetation, and that there's no impact from the 8-foot fence. The second variance is a variance that the building inspector has determined that a 24-foot wide access drive is required. Currently, the existing access drive is what we're proposing to use. We're not proposing to increase the access drive or create a new access drive. As shown on the site plan here, the first approximately 100 and some odd feet is over a DEP watershed property. That's an existing access drive. The easement is actually only 20 feet in width, and we're proposing to use the existing access drive. Then the access drive crosses a second parcel. Again, it's an existing access drive. It's approximately 12 feet in width. If it were to be expanded to 24 feet, we'd have to remove trees and a stone wall, and we're not proposing to do that. From there, the existing access drive, again, goes on the subject property back to the facility in this location. So again, we're not increasing the size of the access drive. We are making an improvement that's unrelated to the access drive, but there's an existing condition where water is coming off this hill, so we've proposed to put in a swale and check dam in this location. That's all under review by the planning board. So again, we are not proposing to increase the access drive, and we're also asking for an interpretation that there is no requirement for a 24-foot wide access drive. Under the zoning code, we believe the access drive of 24 feet only applies to aisles and for parking and loading areas, but nevertheless, we've requested in the alternative the variance necessary for the 12-foot wide access drive. The 24-foot wide access drive is also only required for two-way traffic. This is essentially an unmanned facility. It's visited approximately once every 6 weeks just for routine maintenance and inspection, so the amount of traffic on this access drive is insubstantial. The final variance relates to the height of the facility. The proposed height was originally filed with the planning board at 180 feet. After additional testing and review by the town's own telecommunications consultant, the application has been reduced in height to 140 feet. The proposed pole has also been designed to resemble a tree. In support of the application, we did submit a number of documents which included all of the application forms, the letter of authorization, the disclosure statements, the notification to the property owners, and again, the deeds. We also submitted the memo from the code enforcement officer laying out these variances. We submitted a memorandum from the town's telecommunications consultant that was retained by the town separate and apart from the applicant, who determined that the coverage need for the facility is justified at the height of 140 feet. We also submitted a visual resource evaluation that included a height of originally 180 feet, a crane test, and 6 different balloon tests. We provided visual renderings in your package showing the height of the tree at 140 feet. We submitted an FCC compliance report. Although the issue of FCC radio frequency exposure is federally preempted, we did submit a report that showed actually in this case, even with a full build out of the tower, the facility would be 55 times below the FCC limit. We submitted a report from our own consultant, Peercon Solutions, which showed the justification for the proposed facility. We submitted the environmental assessment form with visual EAF. Just a point of note, the planning board has declared its intent to be lead agency. Therefore, this board is actually not able to act this evening, and we do understand this will have to be carried over because the planning board has not issued a secret determination as of yet. So we do consent to carrying this over to September 26th meeting. We submitted an opinion letter regarding FAA lighting. The tower will not require any FAA lighting. And finally, we submitted a structural report showing that the tower will be constructed in accordance with all state structural requirements. With respect to the site plan, as I mentioned, that's the location of the facility. We're using the existing access drive. The utilities on the plans that you have show above-ground utilities, but we've agreed with the planning board to place the utilities underground along the existing access drive. We can submit revised plans that have been previously submitted to the planning board as a copy to your file. We're proposing to add 3 20-foot spruces, which are required by the code since the proposed facility is designed to resemble a tree. And finally, all of the setback requirements, both to the property line and to surrounding residences under the Town of Carmel Code, have been met with this proposed application. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so an area variance, there are criteria that need to be taken into consideration. Number one, will an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties be created by granting of the variance? I leave that one up to interpretation, but, you know, some of the neighbors might have issues, and some of the surrounding residences. Number two, can any other method be used that does not require variance but still allow for the benefit requested? I would think there are potentially other types of properties or commercial properties that would fulfill this. I mean, I don't know if that data is proven as such within the information given, but that's a question mark. Is the proposed variance substantial? I'd say when it comes to the height of the tower itself, in my mind, I feel that's pretty substantial. Number four, will the proposed variance have an adverse effect or impact on the physical and environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district? Again, I leave that up to interpretation, but I think that's affected there. And number five, is the alleged difficulty self-created? So I'm going to open it up to the board.
Mr. Chairman, can I just address those issues first, if I may,
Sure.
please? So those are actually not the correct criteria for this particular application. The applicant and the application in this case is deemed a public utility under New York State law. And under a case from the Court of Appeals, Cell 1 v. Rosenberg, that's the highest court in New York State, they deem that the variance criteria for a public utility application such as this is a different criteria. In addition, there's federal law that applies in this particular case because this is deemed a personal wireless service facility under federal law. Under federal law, the facility cannot be prohibited as far as providing its necessary service, which has been confirmed by the town's own consultant. As far as the New York State variance criteria, the court made it clear that a municipality may not exclude a utility from the community, and that the standard is actually that the proposed use is necessary to render safe and adequate service. And we did cite in our cover letter to those cases and to those particular laws, both federal and state, with regard to this. So as far as the proof that the facility is necessary, we did submit throughout the process the reports from our radio frequency consultant showing that the facility is necessary, including at the proposed height, and the town did retain its own consultant to confirm those criteria.
Okay, Greg, is that true fact about the federal?
In terms of the Court of Appeals criteria?
Sorry.
In terms of the Court of Appeals criteria that Mr. Guadioso cited, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yes, it's accurate.
Okay.
But the criteria is reduced,
Yes, it's a less burdensome standard for the applicant
but there's
to
still
meet.
a criteria that has to be.
The criteria is reduced to the essentially what I mentioned before, as the Court of Appeals said, that the proposed use is necessary to render safe and adequate service. The federal courts have taken that criteria a step further, and I did cite this. This is Cellular Telephone Company versus the Town of Oyster Bay, and the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the highest federal court in this area, stated, quote, in New York, cellular telephone companies are afforded the status of public utilities. As such, a cellular telephone company's application for a variance must be judged by the Zoning Board of Appeals on a different standard than that applied to the usual application for a use variance. Rather than granting a variance only on a showing of unnecessary hardship, the local zoning board must consider whether the needs of the broader public would be served by granting the variance. And then it cites back to the Rosenberg standard, which is that the facility is necessary to provide that adequate service.
Okay.
Robert, can you explain if a 75-foot pole would provide safe and adequate service?
It would not. So the problem at 75 feet is twofold. One, it is too low to the tree line to be able to cover the significant gap in service that's been demonstrated by the various maps, including propagation maps, drive test data, and key performance indicators submitted by Verizon Wireless's RF engineer. At 75 feet, the area of coverage would leave other gaps in the area. What we did as part of the crane test, not only for the visual renderings, we actually tested the signal throughout the area at 3 different heights. In this case, 180, 160, and 140 feet. And we also did coverage maps showing the lower heights. And what that demonstrated was that at the lower height, even below 140 feet, not even down at 75 feet, which is the height limit, there would still remain significant gaps in service. Therefore, the 140 feet, as confirmed by the town's consultant, is the minimum height necessary. At that height, we're also able to be able to comply with the code's requirement of co-location. So we'll be able to provide an additional spot on the pole for a future carrier. And what we've pledged to the planning board is that we would build the foundation, that if the town were to approve an extension in height in the future, we would build in the structural capacity of the facility to be able to support that, so that way to avoid the proliferation of future towers and be able to encourage the co-location on this particular tower, which is required by your own code.
Thanks.
Mark, do you have any other questions?
Just one other question about the fence. Did you say, did I hear you correctly, that there was going to be screening around the fence?
So when you look at the site plan, the backside here is completely wooded. This is tucked in, there's woods all throughout this area. What we have is 3 20-foot trees in front of the fence to be able to screen the fence as well. Essentially, there's no place where you can see the fence from.
Thanks.
Yeah, Robert, the height at 140 is 140 feet above the ground level.
Correct.
To the pinnacle of this antenna tower. Now, there's a note here about branches extending another 7 feet higher.
Correct. So what we've offered is we could do one of two things. We could either cap the branches at 140 feet, similar to the height of the tower, or we could put a couple topping branches on top that go up 7 feet. We did consult with Mr. Carnazza. He confirmed that that would be an architectural feature that doesn't require a height variance. Our position is either way, we're happy to either put the couple extra branches on top for the additional 7 feet, or leave it the way the visual renderings show it, just at 140 feet. We're comfortable either way.
Could you explain to the board the means and methods of installing the antenna piece by piece, and how it's erected up to 140 or 147 feet?
Sure. It's a good question. So the first thing that happens is the foundation is designed and the foundation is installed. Either it's a mat foundation or it's a caisson foundation, depending on what the geotechnical report says, and that's typically done at the building permit stage. From there, there's a base plate installed in the foundation. From there, the tower itself is stacked, typically in 20-foot sections, and it's a stacking process with a crane. The antenna mounts. Go ahead.
So you have a crane on site?
Correct.
At the construction site?
Correct.
And the crane, what style of crane is that going to be? Every crane has a stick height on it.
I don't know off the top of my head for this particular one, but I believe it would be a 100-ton crane, but I can confirm that.
Yes, so the crane would be higher than the structure.
The crane would typically
lift
be
it.
higher during that one. It's basically a one-day stacking time. That's all it takes. Thereafter, any of the work that's done on the tower is typically done with a man truck, with a bucket truck. So rather than the type of crane that's used for the stacking of the tower, it's more of a bucket truck type crane, or they can climb the tower because it has climbing apparatus on it. To continue, after they stack it, then they mount the branches. All the branches come basically pre-assembled, so they assemble the branches onto the tower, as well as the mounting brackets for the antennas. The antennas then are attached to the mounting brackets, and what we've put a note on the planning board plans, as well as that the antennas will also be camouflaged with what we call socks. Basically, they look like pine needles over the antennas. All the branches and all of the mounting brackets will be colored the same tree color of the pole to match, and then the brown and green branches are attached to the pole on the outside of that.
Good. And then on the antenna itself, there would be the antenna arrays that would be on the structure. How many arrays would be on there?
So what we have, just to put it into perspective, the maximum height of the Verizon antennas would be the 140 feet. Verizon has 6 antennas. Just to give you an idea of the size of the antennas, they're approximately 72 inches in length by 11.9 inches in width by 7.1 inches in depth. Those are attached to, there are arms that come off the tower, and then a bar, and the antennas are mounted 2 per sector. When I say per sector, there is 3 different sectors around the tower. That would be considered, those 6 antennas in 3 sectors would be considered one array at the maximum height of 140 feet. We will build the tower to be able to hold 3 more arrays below that, because there are currently 4 carriers operating in this area. So generally, you have Verizon, you have AT&T, you have Sprint Nextel, which is one company, you have T-Mobile. As you probably heard in the news, T-Mobile and Sprint are trying to combine. You've also heard that Dish might be coming to the area.
Right.
So generally, there's usually 4 carriers. We would design the tower to have 4 ports. That could be 3 other arrays installed in the future. Because of the low height at 140 feet, we would design the foundation of the tower and the structure of the tower to be extended by 20 feet if approved by the town in the future, to avoid another tower someplace else.
Is that would be like 4 separate licenses then, or?
Correct.
it
So
would be-
each carrier has to have an FCC license. Typically, they're licensed in a number of different frequency bands, and they operate all their frequency bands from the same antenna array.
Sure. No more further questions, Chairman.
Also, to your point, the base of the facility, we've designed as well with enough space to be able to support all of the 4 carriers. We've also proposed to bring in both telephone and electric in one shot, so that way we're not digging up for electric and telephone each different time. So we'd bring it all in at once to be able to support those co-location efforts.
How did this site come into selection? Was it?
Sure. So the zoning code has a priority list, and the priority list, and I'll go through it with you because it's a little bit redundant. The priority list is essentially, the first priority is to use an existing tower with existing antennas. And what we showed, and we showed it to the planning board, we can submit the report to you as well if you'd like. We've showed that on existing towers in non-residential zoning districts, Verizon Wireless is already on all of those existing towers in non-residential zoning districts. Then the second priority is co-location on a site with an existing wireless telecommunication tower or structure in a non-residential zoning district, but not fronting on Route 6, 6N, 52, and 301. That's, again, redundant to the first one because that's essentially where most of the existing facilities are located, and Verizon's already located on all of those facilities. The third priority is co-location on a site with existing wireless telecommunications towers or structures in any other non-residential district. So again, that's the same as basically 1 and 2 in essence when you break it down and you look at the map. And we can submit that map to you as part of the record. Number 4 is installation of a new wireless telecommunication facility in any non-residential zoning district. So when we submit the map to you, and I have a copy tonight I can hand up to show you, you can see all the non-residential zoning districts are the areas where there are already the existing towers and structures. So again, Verizon's in all of those locations. When you look then at the 5th priority, it's installation of a new facility in a residential district. When you look at the area where the gap is, and when you look at the area where the residential zoning district is, that's where we're located. And let me just show you this one map because I think it is helpful. I apologize, I only have one copy each, but we'll submit these for each of you. So there's 2 different maps here. The first map that the chairman has shows the location, that's their master service plan, that shows the location of all of the existing Verizon sites with the blue dots, and one site at the time when this map was produced that was approved but not yet built, it's been built. So all of the blue dots are existing sites. When you look at the pink dots, the 2 that are subject tonight, up north is Dixon Lake, and below that is Lake Cassie, what we're talking about now. As you can see, that's between the Putnam Valley Hospital to the east and all of the sites along Route 6 and up to the north to the west. And there's really, and basically as 6 and 6N go, it's kind of like from the southwest to the northeast. And as you can see, those areas don't have any blue dots because they don't have any existing facilities. When you look at the second map that I handed you, That shows a more zoomed-in detail, and you can see the various commercial zoning districts. And again, as you can see, where Putnam Valley Hospital is to the east and where all the sites are to the west and the Carmel site up to the north, those are the commercial zoning districts. So where the proposed site is, it's essentially all residential. So no matter where we went, we wouldn't be able to go on a location that was non-residential. And then the last map that I'd like to show you. I just want to caveat this. This is a map in green showing basically the best case Verizon wireless service. And the reason I say the best case, that's at its 700 megahertz frequency band, which covers the furthest, which means that the gap area is the smallest. But even at that frequency band, as you can see, the areas that are already covered in green are all of the commercial zoning districts. So the area that's left is all residential. So in order to cover the residential area, you have to install a facility within the residential area. And we've detailed this in a report. We'll submit that report to the board, but it has already been reviewed as part of the special permit process where the priority criteria is an applicable criteria. Finally, the last map I'd like to show you, this would be the coverage at the 140-foot height. It says the center line is 136 feet. That's because the antennas are 8 feet. Where they generally propagate from is the middle of the antenna. So we're showing that at 136 feet. And that's the blue. Again, that's the best case scenario at the 700 megahertz frequency range. When we submit the full report, we'll include the 2100 megahertz frequency range, which covers a much smaller area, and therefore the gap is much larger. But again, at a worst case scenario for us, the gap is still all within the residential area. And that the coverage at the 136 feet, maximum tower height of 140 feet, covers that gap area throughout the residential zone.
Okay. Go ahead.
The gap that you're talking about, that's the need that Verizon is providing to us in this report, correct?
Correct. So what we'll do is we'll submit the previous reports to that. There were a couple different reports that show all of the various ways of showing the need. So one way to show the need is the propagation map, which I just showed you. That's a computer-generated map that's based on all of the technical criteria and how the signal propagates, and then it shows on the map the entire area of coverage that is existing and proposed. The thing about the map is that it's computer-generated. What we did is we took a step further, and we actually collected signals, not only the existing signal levels from the surrounding sites to show the gap area, we also collected signals at the multiple heights from the crane test, and we're able to show you that. The weakness of the drive test is that you're only able to collect the signals on the roadways, and the way we do that is a special drive test vehicle with an antenna connected to a laptop, and they're able to collect that data and then produce it in the form of a map that's been reviewed by your consultant. And then the final thing that we included is what we call KPIs, although not necessarily something that's always relevant. One of the planning board members did request it. We did submit it to show basically that the drop call data and the access failure. So drop call is when you're on a call and the call drops prematurely. Access failure is when you're unable to initiate a call. We were able to show that there were elevated levels, in some cases extremely elevated levels, on the surrounding sites where the antennas are pointing to this area, which is an indication of that there's an area of service and then there's an area of insufficient service. And that's what the KPIs show. So we included all three of those as reviewed by the town's consultant, and we'll submit those back up reports as well as the report that we did submit to you.
I think you gave them to us. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I think what happened though on the other application, there was a prior report that I think detailed it on the other application. This one details it on this application. I think there were 2 or 3 reports for each application. I'll make sure for the record that we get copies of each and every report that's been submitted to the planning board.
Nothing further, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Mark, you good?
No other questions.
All right, at this point, I'll open it up to the public for comment, questions, concerns. Anybody wish to be heard? Come on up. Well, it's public hearing, so. I state your name and address for the record.
My name is Ron Leviner. My address is 14 Stacy Lane.
Raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. And just do me a favor, before you leave the podium, just
Yep.
sign in.
Thanks very much for an opportunity to address the board.
You can adjust that up or take it off the stand if you'd like.
That's better, thank you.
There you go.
I wanted to make a handful of comments in connection with the presentation provided by Homeland Towers. The first thing I'd like to say is I don't know if Homeland Towers is correct with respect to the interpretation of federal law and federal case law and how it preempts local law. But I do know I have my concerns as to whether they're providing a full and objective viewpoint on that question. And I, along with other residents in the neighborhood, have hired an attorney who will be providing the town with a brief with respect to the entire application. And I would ask that you take our attorney's opinion on this matter and other matters with respect to the application into account. And without granting the interpretation of Homeland Towers, I would note that when they cited federal case law, they did cite a necessity standard, and I would just note that necessity, that's a pretty high standard. That's a tough standard. It's not a question of convenience. It's not a question of which site is cheapest, but the plan has to actually be necessary. And they've certainly provided a great deal of information, but I would just note and ask the board to consider the idea that even based on even granting their interpretation of the law, that's a tough standard that should be considered carefully whether it's been met. Now, the next point I'd like to raise is that every time that Homeland Towers has previously been asked at a public hearing whether the proposed tower could be shorter than 180 feet and now shorter than 140 feet, they had responded by noting that our town code encourages co-location, and that co-location requires additional height. I think they went into some detail on that point tonight. And so I would ask this board whether an exception to this preference might be a better idea in this case. Perhaps the town generally prefers co-location, and there might be valid reasons for doing so, but I would just ask whether it might be a better idea to, rather than approving a 140-foot tower, then to look at whether we might waive that preference in this case, whether the town might waive that preference in this case, and ask Homeland Towers to reduce the height of the tower as a result. And I would further ask whether, if the height of the tower was lowered because co-location was no longer preferred, whether Homeland Towers would still be interested in the site. In other words, if they could not collect co-location fees, would they be interested in the site? I think it's an important question, and I think a big reason why it's an important question is because if they're not interested in the site, unless they can collect co-location fees, what does that say about whether they have met a necessity standard? I think it's a point worth pondering and a question worth asking from the applicant. Sorry, let me look at the rest of my notes here. So the next point I wanted to raise is that I've certainly talked to many neighbors in the area of 254 Croton Falls Road, and they unanimously agree that the tower would in fact have a large impact on the enjoyment and the value of their properties. Many of those residents have written letters to the town supervisor, the planning board, and the town board reflecting those concerns. And certainly we can get copies of those letters to you if you don't have them already. And I'd like to bring in another fact that I think makes that especially relevant. I apologize if you all already know this, but the property itself, 254 Croton Falls Road, was created by a variance for a subdivision that was granted by this board in August of 2015. At that time, the property owner told this board, the Zoning Board of Appeals, that the sole purpose of the variance was to build a retirement home. And there is, in fact, a retirement home on that property. I know because I could see it from my house. And that the proposed use would have no impact on neighboring properties, including homes on Stacy Lane, which is the road that I live on. That, in fact, turns out not to be the current planned use of the property. And I would like to suggest to this board that granting a second variance, not long after the rationale for the first variance turned out to be utterly false, would have a significant impact on the credibility of the authority of this board and of the town's governing mechanisms in general, and that this would be, irrespective of this application, that would be terrible for all the residents of this town. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just make sure you put the mic back on, please. They're new. Anybody else wish to be heard on this application? State your names and address for the record, please.
Michael Borelli, Westlake Boulevard, Mahopac. I like this side better.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Are you going to be speaking?
She's going to speak to.
Okay.
Emily Borelli, 250 Croton Falls Road.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing
I
but
do.
the truth, so help you God. Thank you.
I just wanted to pick up on what the last gentleman said, because that's why I'm here tonight. And I'm not here as a town representative. I'm here as a landowner and a neighbor. My daughter's dream house. I've known Richard Deal for 45 years, okay, very, very closely. And I've known his home, 250, the previous home that my daughter's in now, for 40 years, since he had it, 35 years. When we bought that house, we bought it on a handshake. The contract came after, because you have to do that with real estate. But we bought it on a handshake, and it's quite obvious that handshakes don't mean what they used to mean. He was to build his own house up there. He had commercial uses on that property. I never felt I needed something in writing from him for what he told us. Obviously, maybe I shouldn't say it this way, but maybe with the fourth or fifth wife, I should have. We were assured and we were promised that the commercial usage on that property was going to cease with the retirement of the people that were on the property. And there were people that I knew. So we entered into this deal for the Razor family based on the knowledge that the commercial pieces, the commercial trucks were going to come off, and there would never be another commercial vehicle going up that driveway. That driveway passes her house only, and tenants. To say we were misled is, I wouldn't even know how to describe to you how I feel over what this man did to us. Okay, but I'm saying it publicly because I stood up here and vouched for him when he came here for that variance. And I want to speak publicly and tell you what was told to me. Because if I ever would have dreamed going upstairs a year and a half ago or a year ago that I would find out from Rob Varro or Rich Franzetti that a 180-foot tower is being built without anybody telling me first, I never would have believed it. Never. And I never would have stood here and vouched for that guy. So I'm a realist. I know your limits. I know that case law. I think I know how this is going to turn out. But I wasn't letting this go by without speaking publicly what this man said to us and what this man promised us. So now he knows publicly how we feel. And if he wants to pass the house, because I feel as soon as this tower goes up, he's just going to sell it. He'll never live there. And the fool should know his house is going to be worth half what it is now. And he'll never recover in his lifetime what they're going to pay him. Just want to get that off my chest.
Thank you.
I have a couple of other items I want to discuss. I had brought this to the planning board, but I would like to share it with you guys as well. When my father and Dave Rafaro had first met with the individuals regarding the cell tower, this is when they were doing the balloon test, they assured my father and Dave Rafaro that the easement would be paved. As they have explained to you guys, they plan on digging it up
On site,
on site.
during the balloon test.
They told them himself that they plan on paving it up. Right now, I don't know if you guys have been there yet or anywhere. I drive a Subaru Crosstrek. It's not a big car, but if there is a truck that's coming that way, you can't fit two cars there. You got to pull over to the side, and then on that, you're already on brush and an unpaved area. So the spot it is right now is also a disaster. To top it off, my lovely neighbors, the Deals, have not done anything to upkeep the property. So there is monstrous potholes and everything that I myself am taking care of. Now, if it's going to be even more destroyed because these people are planning on tearing everything up to dig some trenches and then install their items, I think it's fair that at least they should be responsible for paving it, especially since they told people themselves that they planned on doing it. Additionally, another item that has been a major problem since this whole issue with my neighbors is that the Deals had to put in site-mandated drainage when they were building their driveway up into the property. They did not, so.
They did, they had a CO, and then they removed it.
So that again goes to their character. Now, the issue with that is that affects me because they are uphill in elevation, so all the water runs off of their property and further destroys the easement in which I have to share with this individual, and now, which these people are going to continually make it even worse by having to dig it up if they do not fix the drainage issue and the paving issue. Now, another issue that I had a problem with today that Verizon brought up was that they stated that they weren't planning on doing any sort of vegetative screening or cedar fencing like that. They were planning on just doing the bare necessity because, well, in their opinion, it's surrounded by vegetation and then no one will see it. I will see it, especially in the winter. In Phillipstown, they just required them to enter into a maintenance agreement, And part of the maintenance agreement would be maintenance of the easement in which they're accessing. Another would be requiring them to have cedar fencing. A third would be to require them to have this vegetative screening. It's not like we're asking them for a lot. It's just to make it look a little bit better since they're probably going to get their way anyways. And for them to be required to dismantle it if that time comes in which it's no longer a necessity. So again, these are all items that have been agreed, but also it's been done in Phillipstown. I don't know why it can't be done here. My other question that I have is, since they've brought it up again tonight about the possibility of needing an extension on this, it's already at 140 feet. It could go up another 20 feet to 160. Are we coming back here again for a whole other variance? And then what are the process with that? So those are my couple of issues I have. I would just like to have some sort of maintenance agreement putting down in writing so we can kind of control the damage that's going to be done to the property. And then also have the same items that were agreed upon in the town of Phillipstown agreed here, which is the cedar fencing, vegetative screening, dismantling done by the Homeland team. So that's what I have to say for tonight.
All right, most of your concerns would be addressed by the planning board. What's in front of us right now is just the three variances
Right.
for what he's looking for. To answer your question, if someone's going to do something in the future, it's a whole new application. They'd have to come back through this whole process. I
Not in
believe.
this case, though. There's a code section, I'm sure Mr. Gordioso knows that, I don't have it in my head, but they're allowed to increase by 20 feet, or 10%, I think it is, without returning to the planning, zoning, or changing their seeker.
And that's where my question was if you allow the variance for that additional 65 feet in which they're requiring, are you then essentially just giving them a variance for 85 feet since they don't have to come back for that additional 20 feet if they need to be?
I guess Mike just read that to you. I was unaware of that, but
That's my understanding. I spoke to Joe Charbonneau about this, and that was the discussion.
So essentially, a 65-foot variance is an 80-foot variance grant, and it's no longer 140 feet, it's 160.
so it's irrespective of what the neighbors and the town
Exactly.
thinks. It's Uncle Sam doing what he does. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else wish to be heard on this application, ma'am? State your name and address for the record.
My name is Gail Fierro. I live at 308 Croton Falls Road.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. My name, well, I already said my name. I won't even talk about the residential 1 through 5. We all know that.
If you can, just speak up a little further.
Yeah, it's, right now, the first thing that is undeniably inevitable, because I brought it up at the planning board meeting, is our property that is next door to our house on 308. It's numbered 292 to 300 Croton Falls Road, and it used to be where the Summer Stock Theater in Mayapack used to, all the actors and actresses used to stay there for the summer. And it's one in particular, number 294, the house has been designated by the New York State Historical Society as a possible inclusion in there, and it's already in their website. I gave the planning board all the letters from the park, it's the New York State Department of Recreation and Historic Preservation, from William Krattinger, and I read it. I don't want to read it again because I don't want to take up a lot of time, but do you have copies of that? Because I wanted to give it to you right now.
I don't think they were given to this board, maybe to the
No.
planning board.
That was given to the
You don't
planning
need
board.
it. You don't need it, okay.
You could give it to us.
Okay.
Again, just a reminder, tonight in front of us is just for the variances
Yeah,
that they're
I
seeking.
know, but there's a little more backstory to the whole thing that I think, like Borelli was talking about, it needs to be said also. Because ever since this started, a year ago, I guess, people have been asking me, why would the Deals want to put up this ugly tower that I know we can't say that it's unhealthy, but why would they want to do that? But I'll tell you why they want to do that, one of the reasons. And all the old timers that have lived in this town for the past, we've lived here 45 years, they can tell you that when we bought this property from Jill Miller, who was the head of the Summerstock Theater, my husband has still an electrical business in town. Jill Miller used to call up, he used to do all the electric there, and she used to actually tell us that she would not sell this property to anyone else. And she didn't want to hear anything. And we heard from her that Mr. Deal had gone to her several times, I guess, wanted to buy it, and she didn't trust him. And she told us through the years she would only sell it to George and I. And we had, we grew up with nothing. We didn't know anything about commercial properties or anything. So we just let it go. But she kept saying that to us, that she wanted us to buy it, So right now, Mr. Gaudioso and Homeland, they all have to redo all their hundreds of pages of applications because one in particular, Section E asks, does the project site contain or is it substantially contiguous to a building, archaeological site, or district which is listed on or has been nominated by the New York State Board of Historical Preservation for inclusion on the state or national register. I have many documents that we've already been accepted with this because number 294 Cottage was occupied by Richard Yates, who was a famous author who wrote Revolutionary Road. He lived there while he was writing this book, and also a well house where he made a little office. And Mr. Krattinger told me when they determine who's going to get into this, they want to know they want it to be where the person lived while they were making a name for themselves, not where they were born or not where they died. So he made a name for himself for writing this book on the property, which is in clear sight of where they want to put this tower. And my house on 308 is the closest to the proposed tower. It's, I think, 479 feet. But just the backstory is when Albany, she called herself Albany, Jill Miller said she would only sell it to us. And she said, I want you to buy it and I want to have a life estate here. So finally, after I just have to get this one note for myself. Someone in the town with a lot of knowledge came to us, and this was 1984, came to us and said that Jill Miller owed a lot of taxes on this property. And if she was going to lose it to the town, unbeknownst to us, there were people in town who lived here a long time that wanted this property. We didn't know. Their ultimate goal was to develop it all. Jill Miller knew we just loved this property. It's just so tranquil, and she knew we were the only ones, she said, that she could trust for this. And like I said, I've heard from so many people, why would he want to do this? And I've been, we've gone through a lot over the years because we ended up with this property. And all the old timers, I'll say here, like our age, who've lived here many years, even people that are on the Historical Society in the town, they all know this backstory, that there were residents so angry with us that we ended up with this property because they had the vision that they were going to build. They were going to just make a whole development or whatever. And I guess we interrupted their master plan. Well, over the years, Mr. Deal ended up with the acreage in the back because we did not have the money at that time to keep paying the taxes on empty land. So we sold it to him, this piece where he put his retirement home on. So now that's just the end of that story. It's like this, but this is why there's a backstory, and I feel good now that I can at least get out like Mr. Borelli did and tell the story about this, because there is a backstory that of the people who were so angry with how we ended up with this property.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to be
Thank you.
heard on this application?
I'm sorry, but these applications need to be redone because I was given the opportunity, I got the FCC report, I have all, that I've read over so many things, and everything asks, is this near anything that may be historical? And it's all answered no. And the FCC, too, they wouldn't have made their determination knowing that, yes, there is historical. So,
Okay.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to be heard? Okay. Council, any response, or are you content?
We will submit a statement in writing, as I mentioned before. Just hit on a couple things. I agree with you that a lot of those issues were site plan issues that are in front of the planning board. Regarding the paving of the road, it's not possible to pave the road in that area. It's within 84 feet, even less than that, of a wetland within the DEP watershed, so we're unable to create that impervious surface. There are not monstrous potholes. The road is gravel lined, and we're not going to change any of that, but any work that we do on the road will certainly maintain that portion of the work and make it right as far as what it needs to be as a gravel driveway. As far as the issue of the, I'll call it the SHPO issue, the historic property, we did submit as part of the EAF, SHPO's concurrence, that at the time there were no historic resources in the area. It's my understanding that this recent determination that the property is eligible for listing, not listed, but eligible for listing, was just made in the past month. And that comes well after the SHPO concurrence. That's part of the record now. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Ma'am.
We got it. Okay, yeah.
And as I mentioned before, because of the coordinated secret review, we would agree to have the hearing held open until the September 26th meeting.
What kind of vehicle do you expect to go and service this every 6 weeks?
Usually it's a four-wheel SUV.
All right, you want to be heard again? I'll afford that opportunity.
Emily Borelli again. I have a picture that I just took a couple days ago of a
Just
2
address the
by
board,
4
please.
foot pothole directly across from what he's talking about. He also told me specifically himself he wanted to pave it. So now I'm concerned about the character of this individual, which is now telling you guys something to get their way and telling me, the property owner, something completely different to appease me. I kind of thought they were better people like that. I thought when you do a handshake deal or speak to someone, again, they would be, businessmen or at least professional, but it appears that the lying right to your face directly just now proves otherwise. So if you guys would like printouts of all of the potholes, I will even take measurements for you. And again, if they're only planning on accessing the driveway with a simple vehicle like they just said, I'm confused with how they plan on getting the crane up there, which again is another, I'm not an engineer, but I'm curious to see how they plan on getting this monstrous thing up this tight little area that I have an issue with driving just two cars next to. But I have not seen the specific details of that, so maybe they have something in all their files.
Okay, just submit pictures or whatnot to the planning board when the time comes.
Yeah, I just have to correct something. I've never told Ms. Burley that I wanted to pave the access drive, and as I just informed you, we're unable to pave the access drive, and that's the bottom line on it.
Okay. All right, Greg, we can't close the public hearing on this, or?
You could. There's the question of the action that Mr. Guadios is bringing up, because seeker is still undetermined by the planning board. But what you have is, I believe the applicant has additional submissions for you. Is that correct? And some of the people have spoken wanted to submit something to the board as well, a brief or memoranda to that effect. So I think the best thing to do is to keep the public hearing open to the next meeting. At that point, presumably seeker will be done at planning board. There'll be a determination one way or the other. And I think that's probably, based on the record here tonight and the proceedings, that's the best thing to do.
All right,
So
so
a motion to hold over?
you're looking for a holdover, basically, okay. I'll look for that motion.
Motion to hold over?
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
And that's
Thank you, sir.
September 26th, correct? At
Correct.
7:30. Thank you.
Okay. And you're representing application 5 tonight is Homeland Towers
Rose thought she was coming.
LLC and the New York SMSA Limited Partnership doing business as Verizon Wireless Dixon for a variation of section 156.6202, 156-42D, 15620, as well as an interpretation seeking permission to install wireless telecommunications facility. Property is located at 36 Dixon Road, Carmel, New York, 10512, now formerly Spaccarelli, and is known by tax map 54.-1-6.
Thank you,
Counsel.
Mr. Chairman. Same appearance, Robert Cordioso with the law firm of Snyder & Snyder on behalf of the applicants. In the interest of time, Mr. Chairman, the issues are very similar in this case. I'll try and point out some of the differences. The tower in this case was originally proposed at 150 feet. Through the additional studies and the review by the town's consultant, the application is now for a 110-foot monopine. One of the other differences in this case is that there is an existing access drive in this location on the property, and then we're proposing to put in a new gravel access drive to get to the facility in this portion of the property. But this portion here is paved. This portion is basically a trail now, and we would just improve it with a gravel driveway through here. There's no other traffic that would be on this portion of the driveway. Same issue with the fence. We would agree to go down to the 6 feet. We proposed the 8 feet because of the code section in the wireless code of the town of Carmel, but we're happy with either the 6-foot or the 8-foot fence. We think that the 8-foot fence makes more sense. We did submit all of the same information that I previously indicated with respect to this application. What I'd like to do, and what I will supplement later, are the maps that I referred to in the last application as part of our radio frequency submissions. Again, your consultant did look at these materials and did confirm that the coverage need for this facility at 110 feet has been justified. I'll submit those maps as part of the full application materials that was submitted to the planning board. I'd be happy to
Okay.
answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
This too would also require a holdover, correct?
Correct, and it's the same situation in that the planning board intends to be lead agency. There's a coordinated review. They had previously circulated it last year, so that's probably why a lot of folks don't remember that, but it was circulated last year. There was no objection to the planning board being lead agency, so therefore they have to make a secret determination before this board can.
So that determination wasn't officially made. I read it in the minutes that they were trying to, but
They have not gotten to that stage yet.
hasn't, okay. All right, Phil, anything else?
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
John?
Yeah, I imagine it's the same mobilization, setup, methods and means for construction, and this could possibly go to about 132 feet with the 20%,
No, so it's.
Oh, it's 20 feet.
So here's the rule.
20 foot.
Here's the rule. The federal rule is if the facility were approved, it could only be extended a maximum of 20 feet or 10%, whichever is greater. So in this case, it would be 20 feet. And it's only able to do that if it meets 6 criteria, and that has to be approved by the town. So it's not an automatic up to 130 feet. It still has to go through a process. There are criteria under the law, one of which is that it would not defeat the stealth elements. In this case, we're proposing a stealth tree.
Did you say whichever is greater?
10% or 20 feet, whichever is greater.
Wow. So it can be more than 20 feet?
If it were
Not in this particular
if it were a 200-foot
Yeah.
tower,
Yeah, I'm just saying, but
Correct.
it could be more than 20 feet. I thought it was 20 feet was the max.
20 feet or 10%,
10% or 20,
whichever is
but
greater.
I got it, okay.
In this case, the 20 feet would fall. But again, there are 6 different criteria, including not expanding the compound, not creating new disturbance, not defeating the stealth elements of the proposed facility.
No further questions, John Chairman.
Okay, Mark, anything?
No questions.
What did we do before cell phones? Wow. Okay. At this point, I'll open it up to the public for any comments, questions, or concerns. Ma'am in the white, she raised her hand first? Yeah. I saw your hand go up first, so.
Hello.
State your name and
My name
address
is
for the record.
Tina Gambino. I live at 36 Brittany Lane.
Right hand, please. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
And just be sure to fill in your name.
Afterwards?
Yeah, sure.
My purpose here, tonight, my purpose for being here is that I do live right in the area of the proposed cell tower. But the reason I'm standing here speaking to you tonight is that Robert Montanaro, who has been we're a group of us from the neighborhood, and Robert has really stepped up and come forward for the group. But he's not able to be here tonight, so his wife has asked me to read a letter from him, if that's okay.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is clearly to the zoning board from Robert Montanaro regarding the Dixon Road proposed cell tower. Dear Board, the cell tower proposal for the Dixon Road Spaccarelli property should not be approved for the variances specific to height of the tower and driveway expansions. I request that the board consider the following factors. So Robert has little bulleted paragraphs. The removal of 35 trees will greatly disturb the aesthetic beauty of the views and surrounding properties. This, combined with a driveway expansion along the property lines of neighbors, will create drainage issues on the properties as well as cascade onto Dixon Road. The water drainage onto Dixon Road will create a safety hazard for the community and clearly liability to the town during fall, winter, spring freeze thaw events. These trees that will be removed along with a larger driveway will exaggerate a problem that already occurs in this area specific to drainage. Next bullet. Placing a cell tower of 110 feet, only 30 feet from a property line is completely intrusive to surrounding neighbors. This is incredibly ridiculous when the Dixon Road property consists of more than 10 acres of property. The next bullet. Local realtors have already documented that a cell tower will have a negative effect of surrounding home values by 10 to 30%. Using a conservative average of 20%, using a conservative average of 20%, the surrounding 30 homes on Dixon Road, Brittany Lane, Angela Drive, and Bianca Court have an average value of $500,000. This means that this cell tower will take $3 million, which is 20% times 15 million, of homeowner equity out of the pockets of the taxpayers. These same taxpayers pay approximately $500,000 per year in real estate and school taxes. This will create potential litigation on several fronts. Next bullet. There are ample, less intrusive sites in our community that are not in the middle of residential neighborhoods, as well as the fact that the town should be exploring town property, if, in fact, a tower is even needed. If such a tower is needed, placing it on town property, at minimum, the town would gain the income from the tower and be a direct landlord to control the activities by Homeland. This is what the taxpaying community expects of its town boards. This is the difference between good planning versus bad planning. Thank you for your consideration on this utmost critical matter to our community and its future. This is submitted by Robert Montanaro.
All right. Thank you.
And
Thank you.
I can say that we all concur.
Okay. Thank you. We appreciate it. Anybody else wish to be heard? I think she raised her hand next. Sorry, man.
Sorry, I just want to.
Go ahead, take your time. If you guys are going to both speak, just state your names for the record, speak to the microphone and address, and I'll swear you in.
Larry Gray, 20 Brittany Lane in Carmel, New York.
Well, I'll swear you in both together.
Linda Montanaro, 30 Brittany Lane.
Raise your right hands. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you.
Okay, again, in the sake of time, we do, some of the stuff was a bit covered here, but we'll go through it quickly. But it really does have to do with some of the proposed driveway and some of the, we think, damage that's going to come to the property. And as Tina stated, it's a 10-acre property, and a lot of this has to do with already having existing driveways that they have, but they're proposing to put a driveway all the way around here across all of our properties through the back with the removal of. And
These are all properties along the back. There's a stone wall here, and then you see the driveway.
Oh, yeah.
Right, the driveway is right up against the stone wall, disturbing all of the trees that are going to probably be destroyed on the property lines. Not to mention the fact that this whole area, which they don't talk about, is an entire ridge coming up from Dixon Road. And this is where we talk about the drainage issue, which your DOT has come in and made big trenches, because we already get rain and water and rocks and gravel and everything coming off of that driveway. And now they want to add an extra driveway with another like 500 plus feet of blacktop.
And again, it's just with a 10-acre property and all their stuff right here, the tower goes against our houses and their driveway goes along our houses. And that just doesn't make a lot of sense. And that was one of the questions I have is, is it documented, can they accurately count how many trees are going to be removed? Is that part of the process?
I think there was an assessment of 35 trees in the reports that I saw, if I recall.
I see a lot more trees
I
on that.
I don't know who made that count or assessment,
no,
but it was offered in the,
Saplings are not trees, just so you know.
That's okay. No,
A
there's
tree's not a tree until it becomes a certain measurement.
No, but this is a pretty mature area. There's a lot of
That's fine.
trees.
I just want to make sure everybody knows it's not.
And also, the other thing that you need to note is that this entire area right here where they're going around, there's no trees. It's a paddock. It's where they put his horses. So, you can go on.
So, but again, with a lot of the points, many of these were raised about tree removal, using their own existing driveway and property and building off of that versus disrupting everybody else in the entire neighborhood. Current water runoff, icing, all of this burden should be on the property owner, and we should not be the ones that are burdened with everything that goes on in this process. Trees, runoff, erosion, that's, yes.
Okay.
Literally.
Again, those are planning board issues and concerns.
Okay, I thought
And
some of
it's
that
fine that you addressed them here, but we're really just concerned about
No,
the variances
yes,
that they're seeking.
So I did have a couple questions that may be for the planning board, but one of the things that I'd love to ask is, they cited, so you heard before about the property values, and that's certainly look, health concerns, all of that is my issue as well, but property values is a big deal to me. And I did, I actually do consumer market research for a living, so I did a bunch of research. I can just simply do Google stuff, and I found about 30 studies that all talked about the degree of property value decline. They cite a study that said property values increase when you put a cell tower in a residential neighborhood. I guess that was submitted. I guess my question would be, I assume we have access to that, would have access to that, and would love to get my hands on that, because again, I do that for a living, so I'd like to see the methodology, I'd like to see the data, I'd like to see, the questions that were asked, all of that, because research can tell you what you want it to tell you. So,
I don't recall reading that in the literature, but I mean, it's
It's in the
certainly
planning
public-
department. That is in the
record.
planning file.
Okay.
So, but would that be something we would be able to have, is that access for the public?
Everything we have is accessible to the public, yes.
Through website and all that kind of stuff, or no, just,
You'd have to go in and see Rose or
Gotcha.
Dawn.
Okay.
You'd have to
Okay.
request that form.
Excellent. Let me just make sure I didn't have one more question before, because again, some of this may very well be for the town board, which is great. Yeah, like I said, would like to verify the number of trees removed, would like to get my hands on that study. And I guess the last question I had is, they talked a little bit about safe and adequate service, and we live right here, we all live right here. Our service isn't outstanding, but we have service. Is this really to expand service, or is this tower going to be 5G capable? And I did a little research on this as well, where 5G is a new technology. Obviously, they know more about it than I do, but it's stronger, bigger bandwidth. Everybody's going to it. There's a race for it to do it. The challenge is most existing towers can't handle it. They have to put up new towers. The other challenge, from what I read, so this is what I read, it may not be fact, that the signals cannot go as far, and more towers are needed, which is why there's a race to put up more of these towers. So it's just, I read a bunch of articles where one goes up, 10 go up really fast. So I would just like to know the real use, is this going to be a 5G capable tower?
I don't
Anything
know
else
that
from the group?
We know the answer to that, but
Did you want to talk about that?
Anything else there?
So I put this picture up here, just so you can get an idea. So one day on my way to work, I backed out of my driveway and I saw a big crane in my backyard. It was right there. And I passed by and I turned around and I came back home. That was the first day, and that was this day's test. I then immediately drove up to the ball field, and I have pictures to show you what it looks like from the ball field. It's even worse. Second day, they came back. They put another crane balloon test. It went even higher. The balloon popped and it failed. They took the crane down. I never saw them again. I called town. I asked whoever was in the building department or whoever, oh my God, like, you have to get here quick, because I needed an explanation for what actually was going on. And nobody would believe what it looks like. That's what it's going to look like at its lowest point. Not to mention the fact that he can add another 20 feet to the top of that. At any point, because they're building the base big enough to accommodate the extra 20 feet from the get-go. So you'd figure that out.
Yep.
If they're not going up an extra 20 feet, they wouldn't be spending the money on a bigger base. And also, there's a generator in this base. Over here, there's a generator here. Generators have propane. You already know what level of damage a propane tank can do. there's got to be at least, I have a generator. I have 2 propane tanks. I run tests on it every single week to make sure that my tanks and my generator's running properly. Nobody's checking on this every week. And if this goes on fire and fails, as you see, my house sits in the middle of the woods. That whole woods is going to go up in flames. Not to mention the horses and everything else he has on his property, but that's a big concern to me also.
Okay. Thank you. I think this ma'am in front, you wanted, ma'am, in the white, you wanted to speak? I'll take you next, sir, with the hat. She raised her hand earlier.
Yeah, it's just very quick to answer Mr. Gaudioso saying that
You have to address the board, ma'am.
that Mr. Gaudioso said that my application showing all of you.
Are you referring to the previous application?
Excuse me?
Are you referring to the previous application?
Yes,
This is a whole new application.
Okay, so I can't
yeah.
talk now?
It was closed.
Yeah.
Okay, because
I'm sorry.
But anyway, it wasn't a month.
Okay.
Going on for a year.
Sir in the hat. Name and address for the record, please, and be sure to sign on that sign-in form.
Rick Racine, 5 Bianca Court, Carmel.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
I'd like to refer to the site plan
Certainly.
with the markings on.
The one she had was color-coded and a little larger.
Let's start with the tie-in of the electric and
You can
communication.
pull the mic off and keep it to your mouth, it's probably easier. There you go.
The electric and telephone tie-in on Dixon Road. The trees would have to be removed from the proposed access road down to Dixon Road to accommodate the trench for the 2 utilities. Or, worse, poles and overhead wires would be run in lieu of underground trenching. Most likely because this slope is all rock and boulders. Okay? The green represents the limit of disturbance, as you could see. I don't know if you can see too well from there. In this particular area, they're allowed, correct me if I'm wrong, by the town, the limit of disturbance, to me sounds like they can do whatever they want within this boundary. Okay. It's 30 feet wide for a 12-foot wide access driveway. Now, we all know what's going to happen. They're going to tear everything they can within this whole boundary to construct the tower, the road and the tower.
Okay, again, those are planning board issues. These are, what's in front of us tonight are just variances for the height, the width, and the height, the aisle width of the drive, and the height of the fence. Okay? so,
Okay, I'm
I mean-
talking about the width of the road, proposed driveway. So this here tonight doesn't concern cutting of trees or any of that. Is that correct?
No, you can voice your concern about that, that's fine. But I'm
Okay.
just reminding everybody what's under purview of this board.
But what they're getting a variance for is for a narrower driveway, which will require less cutting of trees. If,
How do they get a 100-ton crane up the 12-foot wide driveway?
what I'm saying, if we made them do the full width driveway, there would obviously be more trees that had to be cut, is all I'm saying. I'm not talking about the logistics of the building, I'm talking about the site plan application. If they put a wider road, there's gonna be more trees. They're asking to make it narrower, that's all I'm just trying to say, I'm not,
Narrower than 12 feet?
no, narrower than what's required, the 24 feet that's required, they're gonna make it narrower. That's what the variance is for.
Okay, I just want to be put on record saying that all the vegetation will be destroyed within this green area.
Okay?
The circled trees with the little boxes, okay? Those are trees to be protected. According to the limit of disturbance, those protected trees are inside the limit of disturbance. Why? Okay. Okay, now the proximity of the proposed access road to the property lines. Note the limit of disturbance is drawn almost on top of the property line. The limit of disturbance is very close to the existing stone walls where they are and very large trees. The construction of this access road from here, going all the way around, particularly in this area, will destroy the roots of those trees. Those trees will die. If they take the stumps out, I don't know, they're going to have to move the stone wall. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to be heard on this application? Council, for the opportunity to respond.
Just a few quick points, Mr. Chairman. The photograph of the crane, that was when the crane was at 150 feet. The proposed height is 110 feet, so that was the full height crane when we did the multiple height test for the testing of the RF signal. It is 35 trees to be removed. The limit of disturbance is basically the largest area that we can disturb. That's a limit to us, but we are protecting trees within that area. We use that limit in the stormwater calculations for erosion control. All of those details are on the plans, and that's been reviewed by the town engineer, and that is part of the site plan application. In addition, as part of the application submitted to the planning board, we do show all the turning radiuses for the various trucks on the property, so that's all been detailed as well. But we do appreciate the comments about the location of the access drive and the facility. The park is over here. One of the code requirements is to minimize impact on the park. We can certainly, if I can just finish, we can certainly look at alternatives on the property that would be closer to the park, but would be further from the residences. So that's something we can certainly take based on the comments this evening. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. All right.
Russ Gambino, 36 Brittany Lane.
Speaking to the microphone, please.
Russ Gambino, 36 Brittany Lane.
Raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do. I was under the impression the park would be an alternate. It's at the same level, it's at the same height. Why would it have to be put in a residential neighborhood when it could be put in the park instead? On town property.
The tower itself?
The tower, well, I've also seen where they put up a tower like a flagpole, which, I mean, is not as intrusive. It's at a ballpark.
One across the street.
It's at the same level. I mean, why is that not an alternative? Instead of putting it in a residential neighborhood, I would just like you to answer
Sir, you have to
that.
address the board, please.
Now, cost is not supposed to be a factor. I mean, if it costs more to do this at the ballpark, that's not supposed to be a factor in this. It's supposed to be what's better for the neighborhood.
Okay.
Would you like to answer that?
Address the board, please.
We did make an offer to place it in the park, and the town refused to lease the property to us.
Okay. I'm not on the town board. I'm here for the zoning board to hear the certain criteria that they're looking for. Okay? If you have an issue with that, you can go to the town board. And if you're going to get irate, I'm going to ask you to leave. I'm sorry. Okay? Respect the boundaries and the rules of law here.
You know, I'm sorry. I get excited. This thing is going in my backyard. When I bought my property, it was a wooded lot. Okay? I bought it because I wanted to raise my kids. It was a nice neighborhood. We built it. When was it in that area that they were going to build a cell tower in my backyard?
I don't know. I don't have the answer
This
to
should
that.
not be in a residential neighborhood.
We're hearing you
I'm
tonight.
sorry for getting
You can say what
excited.
you want, and if you're going to get loud, I'm going to ask you to leave. But leave it at that. We're
When
hearing
I-
your concerns as a board, and we're taking it in, okay? We're not going to vote on this tonight. It's going to be carried over.
It's
So-
my biggest problem. I get excited when I speak.
Okay, well, then I'm going to
about
ask you
this.
to put this
No,
microphone
but
down.
I can
and-
stay calm. It's okay. And I'm sorry. I apologize for that. But it does bring out the passion in you.
I can respect that, and we appreciate that, and we're here hearing it.
And there is
So-
an alternative in this site.
We got that, but that's not for this board to decide upon or under our purview.
You
That's
know,
a whole different situation
the
that you
trees-
would have had to voice
The
somewhere
trees in
else.
that area, average height is about 75 to 80 feet. This is going to be towering over the top of the tree line. I mean, it destroys the aesthetics of the neighborhood. I mean, how would you, I got a nice backyard, I got a nice swimming pool, I got a nice patio. I'm going to be staring up at this thing? This fake
We hear you.
Christmas tree?
We hear you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing for this. I'm sorry. I'm not going to close the public. I'm going to stop this down now. I mean, it's getting a little redundant and heated, so
Motion to hold over.
I'll look for that motion. And so, do I have a second on that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you
Okay.
very much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
All right, at this
Have a
point,
nice
we're going
holiday.
to take a break, and we'll reconvene in a few moments.
It's only two things. Everything's held over.
Okay.
No break.
Yes.
All right, what are these?
Because they're doing 1 and 2.
All right, this is the pile for number 2.
That's a pile for number 1 and number 2.
Put that on the record. Swear
He's
to
my
God.
brother. All right, folks, if you're not going to be here for the other cases, please kindly clear the room so we can finish the evening. The last 2 cases for the cell towers are held over, so we will not be voting on them this evening. Dominic, are we still running? It was changed.
You got it.
Where's that coming from? All right, let me know when you're back on, Dominic. Okay.
Is he live right now?
No. All right, at this point, there's no public application as we go through and vote on the applications tonight. On number 1, Salcow, if I'm pronouncing that properly, forgive me if I'm wrong. I'll look for a motion.
Motion to grant.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any comments or concerns? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, that's granted. Number 2, Frumpkin, I'll look for a motion.
Motion to grant with the condition that all 4 lots are merged into one, and
I think it's 3 lots. Right now, it's, on the application, it's
It's 3.
3.
that all 3 lots, all 3 lots are merged into one, and all approval, another condition is that all approvals are granted with the state.
So it's contingent upon further approvals from DEC, Board of Health, State, et cetera.
Jurisdictional of the lake.
In jurisdiction of the lake. Is that as amended, Rose?
As amended.
And there was also an agreement regarding the variance on the, for the boathouse over the lake.
Yes.
Yes, you
He
reduced.
said he reduced it to 7 feet.
Yes.
You
He
know what?
reduced the amount it was going out by 3 feet, right?
By 3 feet. So so the variance required is 7 feet
Instead of 10.
instead of 10 feet.
Correct.
Mike, we should have had him change that. Can you talk to Dawn about having him come in and sign that, revise that on the application? My bad.
I forgot to.
Can't we just condition it?
No.
No?
You're making the motion that way. We just like them to initial the file so it's accurate.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're granting something that's not written.
All right, so as amended, Rose, do I have a second to her motion?
Second.
Any discussion?
The code for the apartment over the boathouse, okay? That variance? No, I'm opposed.
All right, it's an accessory apartment, which he's allowed by code to have?
He's allowed
Yes.
by code to have that? An accessory apartment over the lake?
As long as he merges the lots, no, over the lake is because of the state. They have to approve that part of it. But you're allowed to have an accessory apartment in the town of Carmel if you get the approval of the Board of Health or sewer if you had it, but they have Board of Health. If you have one door, all these different things. There's a bunch of conditions of when you can and can't do it.
So we couldn't approve that until after the state approval anyway?
No,
Correct.
that's what Rose's motion was. It's contingent upon approval from the other jurisdictions.
That's correct.
That are within the realm of the lake.
That's what I tried to say.
There you go. Spoken like a true lawyer.
Adopt that motion.
All right, so do you rescind your opposition?
Yeah, in favor.
All right, so I'll do roll call. Mark?
In favor of Rose's motion.
John?
In favor of Rose's motion.
Phil?
In favor?
Rose,
For the
obviously.
motion.
And I'm for the motion as well. All right, so that carries,
Everything else is a holdover.
and everything else is a holdover. We can't vote, there's no minutes, we didn't get the minutes yet from last month, so on that note, we will, what did he say? What's the-
Meeting.
Oh, meeting is adjourned. Thank you all, enjoy the rest of the summer. Thank you all. Who's here?
Thank you, you.
Thank you.